So it's taken me nearly a week after seeing this movie. I saw it on Thursday to get to the point where I can talk about it as a movie. And I wanted to talk about it as a film and not just a political cause. I'm going to talk about some of what it's about and its impact on me later on, but I want to talk about that. And why it took me a while to figure out why I think it had the impact on me that it did. I mean, this is basically a much smarter, more down-to-earth version of Taken. So why is it having the impact that it's having? That's what I've been wondering. And well, for those of you who haven't seen it, go see it. This is one of those movies that you absolutely have to see to really understand it. It's nothing like you think. It was nothing like what I thought it was going to be. And good night. I can't believe this was shot for only like $14–15 million because every cent of that money is on screen. Some locations just look incredible. And it has this, and production quality wise, it sort of reminds me of, in the 70s, you had these gritty crime movies like The French Connection and such that used their limited budget to the best of their ability, and they sort of made their low budget, they sort of made their lack of budget a selling point in that it helped bring out the grit of the world, and it just brought, and they used it to give everything an atmosphere, and that's sort of the thing that that is here. It's not overproduced. It doesn't have it doesn't get overly tricky, but it is very entertainingly told and very much and it's very well shot. In a way, it sort of reminds me of the black and white episodes of Dragnet. Not just in how it's shot, in that it's clear that they have limited resources, but they're using those limited resources as best they can, and they decide to go for a very, I would say, a very down-to-earth type of cinematography, and sort of down, and sort of a sort of not very flashy look, but it feels like at times that you're watching something that's documented and you feel like you're in the real world, is what I'm going to say. So the basic plot of this movie is that Tim Ballard was a man who worked for the Department of Homeland Security, and apparently one of the things the Department of Homeland Security does is tackle human traffickers. That is, people who traffic children in and out of the United States. And the first thing that felt interesting to me is I have to wonder, why is this the relatively new? I mean, here's the thing. I know for some people, the Department of Homeland Security has always been part of our government, but to me, it's a relatively new thing. I mean, this was invented when I was a teenager, so it's not that old. So I'm like, so were we just not doing anything about this before? I mean, you would think that if we were doing something about this before, it would have stayed with whatever government department was doing that. There's no need to move. I mean, it would seem to me to be inefficient to take it out of the hands of the law enforcement agency that was doing it and move it to another one that was brand new and just getting up and running. At least that's my fault. So I have to wonder if even paying attention and trying to stop human trafficking is something that is relatively new in U.S. law enforcement. But anyway, so they arrest pedophiles, and this is one of the best acted movies I've ever seen. Here's the thing, and it's not just Jim Caviezel who has who has fewer lines than pretty much anyone else in this movie. But it's like the entire cast. But I will maintain that I've been saying for ever since The Passion of the Christ came out that if Hollywood was a less biased place, he would have won Best Actor for that role. I mean, when you look at his performance and the fact that he does it in an ancient version, in an ancient pretty much dead language, that is one of the most incredible acting feats ever caught on film. And he continued to show his prowess throughout 5 seasons of Person of Interest, which is maybe the most underrated show released in the past 30 or 40 years. It's just that good. But I digress. So he's playing a guy named... So Jim Caviezel plays a guy named Tim Ballard. He's in charge of arresting human traffickers. And you can tell this is taking his toll. Like, at one point, the guy he's working with asks him, well, how come we never okay, we're always catching traffickers. How come we never rescue any kids? And they go, yeah, that's right. So, yeah, and the movie does a good job of showing the toll that the job takes on him, not just from what he sees, which thankfully we don't see what he sees. Instead, the movie handles its subject matter sensitively there are 2 ways it handles it. Either it completely cuts away after it makes sure that we know what's going to happen in some really, really uncomfortable scenes, because the child actors are really good. I mean, this has the best child actors I've ever seen in a film before. And either it cuts away, or it shows him writing, or in the case of where he finds video evidence, they show him put the disc in a drive and start watching it, and they show him typing out a description of what he saw on the tape. So thankfully no kids had to enact getting abused for this movie. And one of the ways that they also do a good job of showing the impact is that they show that the only way that he can get information is to gain these pedophiles' trust, and they show that it is really hard for him to put on this persona to a degree of being a pedophile, to a degree that will fool these guys. Just pretending to be one of these guys is just so disgusting it takes a toll on you. And of course, in another movie, in like something like Taken, you know, he'd be just beating answers out of people and shooting people and stuff. That's not what this movie is. So yeah, so he gets involved with all this stuff. He tries to put together a sting operation to shut down all these kids, and he tries to shut down, you know, like a South American sex island. Basically, it's an Epstein's Island sort of thing, and he uses that as a way to bait the sex traffickers into, because, oh no, on the sex island we need as many kids as possible. So he gets them all to bring all these kids to there, and then so he can then bust them. But of course, he can't really do this as a Homeland Security employee, so he actually quit his job to pursue this, and he's actually backed by some real estate billionaire and a former cartel boss, and some of this film's humor comes from the fact that it's sort of like a buddy comedy, but it's sort of like a buddy cop thing. There's sort of like a buddy cop thing of him and this former cartel boss, who got out of the cartel, and then after a really traumatic event, he decided that he had to start saving these kids he was seeing being trafficked, and so he's actually set himself up. He still looks like he's working with the cartel. He still looks like the big cartel guy, and he looks like the big cartel guy who's also a pedophile. And basically he's like, oh yeah, sell me a kid. They sell him a kid, and he either puts the kid in a safe house or gets them back to their family. Yeah, but of course, nobody knows that he's doing this. He's covered, and so they set up this whole thing, and then at one point, to get this one girl, Jim Caviezel, at the film's climax, has to go undercover, unarmed, into the jungle, into this rebel stronghold, and they show the absolutely horrifying conditions. And so he rescues these kids, and they don't go into any of the stuff that they call conspiracy theories. They don't say the U.S. government is behind it. They just say human trafficking. They just do a very simple, again, just the facts, ma'am, sort of presentation, straight out of Dragnet, where it's like, human trafficking exists. This is how one guy got kids out of human trafficking. So, yeah. And yet, this is so controversial. That's all. So if you're worried about this being, you know, a thing of, you have to elect Trump, which I'm not a pro-Trump guy. I'm not. I would not have agreed with the, you have to elect Trump or the human traffickers win, if that had been the message. Yeah, so, yeah. But that's not what this is. The only message is, stop human trafficking. Please. That's the only message. This is horrible what's being done to these children. They are slaves, and it's as repugnant as any form of slavery ever was. That's the only message. Now, as for why it had such an impact on me, when I've sat through multiple showing airings of stuff like Schindler's List and stuff, I think it comes down to, one, the age of victims, and yes, I know there were children victims in Schindler's List, but also, I don't know, somehow this feels worse. Like, I know I'm going to get some pushback for this, but this somehow feels worse. I think, and after thinking about this for, you know, like 5 days, I finally came to it when I was in the shower this morning, and it was like, here's the thing, in Schindler's List, what it boils down to is, you're still seeing, you're seeing something that we're used to seeing, I mean, we're used to doing on the playground in the end. You're seeing actors play dead. You're seeing, you know, actors lay on the ground like this. Which, I'm not trying to belittle, I'm trying to belittle Schindler's List. I'm just saying that, in the end, I mean, you have the harrowing scene where the Nazi is shooting down somebody. But again, that boils down to, in the end, in the back of your head, you still know it's just a guy, it's just an actor with a fake gun doing the exact same thing you did on the playground, just on a much more elaborate scale. He's just pointing his gun and basically going, in the end, it's just him pointing his gun, basically going bang, and then another person falling down and playing dead. You know, it's, you know, I'm not saying Schindler's List was badly done. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm not trying to downplay the Holocaust, but it's just one of those. But it's just one of those things of like, I don't know. You as a kid, you play people shooting each other. You play dead. You know, you do all that, but you don't play children sitting in bed with absolute terror on their faces as they wait for a drunk tourist to rape them. You don't play children getting shoved into shipping containers and shipped off to who knows where. You don't play children, you know, you don't play children going to what they think is an acting job, only to see the people there slowly sexualize kids that are like 5 years old and like put makeup on them and do their hair up and have them posing and have them start to unbutton their shirts and stuff. You don't. So it's a whole different level. I guess it was a whole different level for me, and it just left me feeling sick, angry, and just sort of like, and it was all these things, and it was just, and it just left me feeling, you know, it just left me so churned up that I couldn't really, my plan was originally to, as soon as I got out of it last Thursday, do a review, but I couldn't. I just couldn't. I couldn't get my thoughts together. And I think that's why, is because this is a type, this is the same sort of wake-up call movie, but also I think the other thing is that Schindler's List was about something that's done. And before you say, oh no, anti-Semitism, so yes, anti-Semitism still exists. I've been on Gap, believe me, I know anti-Semitism and Holocaust denialism, and Hitler still has millions of cheerleaders around the world. But an organized attempt to exterminate the Jewish people in gas chambers, work them to death, and shoot them, that's been over for a while. This is ongoing. So I think that's the other thing, is the fact that this is something that's still ongoing and we haven't stopped. And here's the part of the video that may get me into a lot of trouble, and I'm sure I'll get a lot of angry comments, but I'm probably not going to respond to any. Just letting you know now, I'm probably not going to respond to you if you post in comments saying you disagree with me or getting mad. But here's the thing is, well, we already know showings are getting sabotaged, you know, the media is going nuts, and I think there are two reasons. Here's the thing, we all know that there are people in the media who have been to Epstein's Island and who are probably current users of human trafficking. Because LA, where Hollywood is one of the top destinations to traffic children. So, yeah, so there's that. My other thing is that I think the basic thing of what happened, the basic way this movie made money, threatens the Hollywood system. For decades, the assumption has been that if you really want to make money with a movie, it has to be done through the Hollywood system. It has, especially in the summer, it has to cost a lot of money. You have to spend at least $100 million on advertising, and it has to have huge stars. And that's been how Hollywood justifies to banks that loan them money and investors that invest that they have to do. And I don't think they would be quite as angry if this wasn't succeeding in a year where everything else besides, say, Mario and sort of the new Mission Impossible, but you know, is making, you know, everything else is failing. Because this blows that out of the water. This shows that people really listen to word of mouth from people that they trust in their lives. And so, I think that's as much it, because here's the thing. If you're looking at this and you're a bank that loans money to Hollywood studios, and you see all these studios, and we may have, and right now in theaters, we may have two of the biggest box office bombs of all time. Two of the biggest money losers of all time. The Flash and Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. And they were both massively budgeted, and they had everything that Hollywood said you have to have in order to make money. Now, this is kind of a threat to Hollywood's business model, because this shows that, no, you can do, modern technology has made it so you can make a movie that people find the production design, people find the production values acceptable on like 1/10 or less the budget of your typical summer blockbuster, and two, you don't need a massive advertising budget if people really like the movie. If people are going to say, "Oh yeah, that was a great film," because when I went to see Mission Impossible with my family this weekend, there were people coming in and they were having to be told Sound of Freedom sold out. So it was like, and they were having to be turned away because the showings were all sold out on Saturday. On the Saturday I went to see, on Saturday. So, which I want to thank my local movie theater with all the vitriol going on for having the guts to show this movie. And I'm glad it's paying off for them. I'm glad they're not losing money doing this. So, yeah. But, yeah, it's just one of those things of like, it's just one of those things of, I think it's as much as a threat to Hollywood's business practices in that it makes investing in this type of movie, which this is the type of movie I've been saying Christians should be making. I mean, anybody who knows me knows I've been arguing since before the turn of the century that Christian movies need to stop being family entertainment. If you're going to make Christian movies should feel rooted in the real world, and they should be taking on real world issues better than anybody else. And this is doing that. I mean, this feels 100% real world. People actually talk like real human beings. They curse, they you know, there are people who get drunk, you know, they don't act like the world, they don't act like, and I'm not using this, they don't act like the whole world is the Andy Griffith Show. And I love the Andy Griffith Show, but they don't, but that's what I think of when I think of Christian cinema, is movies that pretend that the whole world is like the Andy Griffith Show, except for a few meanies who will learn their lesson by the end, and they usually have very childish outlooks on life, and people don't talk like human beings. This is not that. This is a real movie. And I guess, and here's the thing. Okay, so here's the question. Okay, so about the part that would get me in trouble, I'm just going to say what I think you can do to stop this. Because what's the good of a call to action without knowing what action to take? First of all, stop consuming porn. It's bad for you, and it's tied up in this, and it's tied up with human trafficking. So that will cut off a huge amount of their funds. You know, people just stop consuming porn. That's something. And then make sure that this is an issue that they can't look away from in next year in the election. Demand. If you don't have a candidate, make it a record low turnout where things go woof, where both parties have trouble getting their voters out, if they don't put forward candidates that will advance the harshest possible penalties for people who exploit children and who kidnap children and traffic them all over the world to be used as sex slaves. That's my feelings on how we fight this. We stop consuming porn, and we demand our politicians pass laws that make the penalties so harsh nobody will want to be caught trafficking a child in the United States. Okay, well, thank you for your time. That went on longer than I thought it would. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time.